So I'm only controversial because people seem to want a controversy. Weird to me is just how creepy he's been obsessed with me and the Somali community. And I remember just feeling like the world was ending. But it was the young people that believed.
A sitting U.S. congresswoman just accused India, the world's largest democracy, home to over 1 billion people, of approaching genocide. No formal report, no cited investigation, just a claim, delivered at a community event that immediately rocketed across social media and drew a direct rebuke from India's own government. This is the latest entry in a long list of statements that have followed Ilhan Omar throughout her time in Congress, and it's landing at the exact same moment. Separate questions about her personal finances are already swirling in Washington. So what did she actually say? What's India's government saying back? And how does this fit into the bigger picture surrounding her this year? Let's break it down. What she actually said? Here's the actual context. On June 7th, Omar spoke at an event hosted by the Indian American Muslim Council, an advocacy group that has long pushed for U.S. scrutiny of India's treatment of religious minorities. Paraphrasing her remarks, as reported by India Today, Omar said it was important to keep raising the alarm because, in her words, it's not just the Modi administration causing problems in India. She described the issue as becoming systematic and societal. She went further, invoking a specific framework, a 10-stage classification of genocide, developed by American jurist Gregory Stanton, the founder of the watchdog group Genocide Watch, and placed India at what she called the 8th stage. That's a specific, technical claim, not just a general criticism. And according to the reporting available, she did not cite a specific report, a specific incident, or a specific data set to back up that classification in her remarks. That absence of cited evidence is the detail driving most of the pushback that followed, not necessarily the broader subject of minority treatment in India, which is itself debated by serious analysts, but the specific, severe framing she chose without showing her sourcing. India's response, India's government, didn't let the claim sit unanswered. Kiran Rijiju, India's Minister of Minority Affairs, had already been making the case for India's minority rights record throughout May and early June, before this specific incident. After remarks like Omar's, he stated publicly that no individual has been compelled to leave the country because of religious identity, and said critics are free to challenge government policy but should not, in his words, spread falsehoods. Rijiju also pointed to what he described as India's record as one of the safest and most inclusive homes for minorities globally, noting that minority populations from neighboring countries, including Afghanistan and Sri Lanka, have sought refuge in India over the years. The Indian government's broader counter-argument rests on a few data points: a growing minority population rather than a shrinking one, and record voter turnout, which they argue undercuts the idea of systemic persecution suppressing political participation. To be clear, citing population growth and voter turnout doesn't, on its own, settle a complex debate about minority treatment. Population growth can occur even where discrimination exists, and turnout doesn't measure lived experience. But it's a real on-record rebuttal, and it deserves to be presented alongside the original claim rather than left out. Who's organizing behind this? It's worth understanding who hosted this event, because it adds useful context to the bigger picture. The Indian American Muslim Council describes itself as a U.S. registered nonprofit and has for years pushed Washington to formally designate India a country of particular concern over its treatment of religious minorities, a formal U.S. State Department designation usually reserved for nations accused of severe religious freedom violations. The group has also called for sanctions against specific Indian political figures and organizations. Omar has been a frequent vocal partner in amplifying these specific themes. She has also worked for years to internationalize the issue of Kashmir, using her congressional platform to draw global attention to it. None of that, on its own, makes her claim true or false. Advocacy groups exist across the political spectrum, on every issue, precisely to push lawmakers toward action on causes they care about. But understanding that this wasn't a spontaneous, off-the-cuff remark, it was a planned speech at a sympathetic advocacy event, helps explain both the framing she chose and the intensity of the reaction that followed. The separate story, running alongside this. Now, here's where it's important to slow down, because two separate storylines about Omar have been circulating around the same time, and conflating them would be inaccurate. Completely separate from the India remarks, Omar has faced ongoing questions about her personal finances specifically, reporting on a reported decline in her net worth, which some commentators have tied to the broader Feeding Our Future fraud case in Minnesota, the largest pandemic-era fraud scheme in U.S. history. Asked directly by Fox News about an ethics committee investigation into her finances, Omar dismissed the questions, stating no such investigation is actually taking place, despite continued media scrutiny. It's worth being precise here. As of this recording, there's a difference between media scrutiny and an active, confirmed ethics committee investigation. Those are not the same thing, and reporting that conflates them risks overstating what's actually been confirmed. These two storylines, the India remarks and the financial questions, are unrelated in subject matter. One is about foreign policy rhetoric. The other is about personal finances and a state fraud case. They're worth knowing about separately, but treating one as proof of the other would be sloppy, not accurate analysis. A pattern of controversial statements. This isn't the first time Omar's public remarks have generated this kind of national attention. Over her time in Congress, she's drawn criticism and, at times, bipartisan pushback for comments comparing actions by the U.S. and Israel to those of designated terrorist groups, language she later walked back after pressure from members of both parties. Remarks about the 9/11 attacks that drew sharp criticism, including from family members of victims, and sustained criticism of Israeli policy that her supporters frame as principled human rights advocacy and her critics frame as crossing into anti-Semitic rhetoric, a characterization she has firmly rejected. Omar, for her part, has consistently argued that the scrutiny she faces reflects bias against her, specifically pointing to the volume of death threats she's received, reportedly among the highest of any sitting member of Congress, and accusing the president and others of what she's called weaponizing fear against her, specifically because of her background and faith. That's also worth taking seriously on its own terms. The threat environment she describes appears to be real and well documented, separate from any assessment of whether a specific claim she's made holds up to scrutiny. The close. So where does this actually leave us? Omar made a severe specific claim about India without citing supporting evidence in her reported remarks. India's government pushed back directly, with its own data points about minority population growth and voter turnout data that addresses part of the picture but doesn't fully settle the underlying debate about minority treatment, which serious analysts on multiple sides continue to disagree about. Separately, and unrelated to this specific controversy, questions about her personal finances continue circulating, though no confirmed active ethics committee investigation has been verified as of this recording. And all of this sits inside a longer pattern: a member of Congress who draws frequent, intense controversy for her remarks, while also facing a documented, serious volume of personal threats tied to her public profile. None of these threads cancel each other out. A claim can be under-supported, and the person making it can still be a real target of threats. A pattern of controversial statements doesn't automatically validate unrelated financial speculation. Holding all of that complexity at once is harder than picking a side, but it's the only way to actually understand what's happening here. We'll keep following this story as it develops.